What is this thing? It rises up from close to the surface in an area that's right over Commencement Bay. It's bright yellow color without any other lights on it. It rises up, then it floats leisurely toward the shoreline. It doesn't move at constant speed or in a straight line. Most people call these things orbs. They've been talked about for centuries. We see them on the Skinwalker Ranch. James Lakatsky, the author of Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, tells us about the government's investigation of them. They come in yellow, like this one, but they also appear in white and blue. Lakatsky also tells us that they have no substance to them. They're pure energy. They can fly right through solid matter or water, really doesn't matter. But what are they? I don't know. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Hi, I'm Jim Lake. I have put out a lot of videos talking about spacecraft and whether or not the objects that I see in the night sky are spacecraft. And you know that while none of us are particularly certain about anything, I'm pretty sure enough to believe that some of these objects are in fact spacecraft. But not all of them. Some of them are something different. Some of them are... What are orbs? And I confess I really don't know what orbs are, but I've seen any number of them over the past 5 or 6 years that I've been videoing the night sky. And I've seen that they come in a variety of different colors. The ones that I see are often gold or yellow colored, but I also see them green, and they are reported by lots of people in blue colors and other varieties. Sometimes the colors change. People report talking to these orbs and asking them to change colors and observing them to change colors on the fly. Now, while I've never done that myself, I have a variety of different kinds of video to show you of them, and shows them under a wide variety of different circumstances. At some point, we're going to have to try and discuss what we think these things are. And I think everyone probably concludes that they're an otherworldly kind of paranormal manifestation. And perhaps that's true, or perhaps this is all just a simulation, and that's part of the simulation. I really don't know. But I've got some interesting video for you, and I'm going to show it to you now. Hope you enjoy it. The first orb is one that I captured a few years ago in Tacoma. It just glides across the field of view and exits to the left-hand side. And as it goes by, notice that it is translucent, that as it passes the stars and occludes one of these stars, you can actually see right through it. You can also see that it doesn't move in a straight line. I put a straight line on here for reference. As you can see, the object bounces back and forth across the line, and then toward the end it just departs on its own direction. For those of you that think that this is a satellite, I want you to notice that there is a satellite moving just below the orb right now from the center to the left of the frame. And for those of you who think this may be an airplane or something similar, here's an airplane flying across the field of view just a few minutes after we see the orb. I've zoomed in on this thing about as much as I can now, and I want you to see that it most definitely is a sphere. You can see uh, the area in the front of it that seems to be lit from, and then the shadows in the back of it really show it to be a semi-translucent sphere. Here's another one that I captured in Tacoma in September of 2024. It's meandering along the sky, very similar to the other one. We notice that the color of this one is a little whiter, maybe a little pink, and I don't know the reason for that. I've noticed that many of these orbs not only change color, but some of them actually actively flash, and that's the case we've got here. This one is red and it flashes to yellow, and it moves very silently, just like the other orbs, but it continually flashes from red to yellow. This one is also from September of 2024 in Tacoma. I have extracted images of the object when it is red and when it's orange and put them next to one another in this frame here so that you could compare the two. And I'm really surprised to see how complete the color change is, and that the object seems to be spherical in its basic shape, just like the other orbs that I have observed. Here's a green and yellow orb that I captured just a few days ago on the 13th of December in Montana. And it flashes again, just like the other ones that I've seen previously that flash yellow and other colors. This one flashes green and yellow. Now, I know that some of you are thinking that perhaps this is an airplane that I'm mistakenly identifying. And I want to show you an airplane that I filmed in exactly the same position a few days before this, and let you compare the two of them so that you can see that there's a very distinct difference between the look of an airplane and the look of an object like that. Now you can see an object right there in front of that airplane, and though the position lights and the strobe lights are quite distinct on the airplane, where they're not at all on the object. Here's another object that is very typical of the objects that I've been seeing here in western Montana for the last 12 months or so. And the thing that characterizes these objects is their brightness. They are brighter than known man-made satellites. But before I go farther with that, I need to explain something about stellar brightness or stellar magnitude. And what I'm showing you now is a chart that I got from Wikipedia that explains this stellar magnitude business. Notice that 0 is in the center of the chart, and increasing numbers show fainter objects, so they get dimmer as the number gets bigger. The reverse is true on the left side of the chart, where the numbers are negative numbers, and as these negative numbers get larger, the objects get brighter, culminating in the very brightest object, which is our sun, which is on the full left side of the chart. So now let me repeat what I said earlier. The very brightest man-made objects in the sky are all dimmer than the brightest stars. Now there's an exception to this, and that is the ISS, and a couple of other specialty man-made objects. But in general, all the satellites that you see in the sky are dimmer than magnitude 4.5. And that means they are dimmer than stars that have an magnitude of 4.5.
Now, there's exceptions to that rule, aren't there always? Some of these objects display transient brightness, and they can increase their brightness above magnitude 4.5 for a few seconds, or sometimes in flashes. But their average brightness, their ambient brightness, is always at or below magnitude 4.5.
So now let's go back to our orb object. We can see crossing the screen here. If our orb object has a brightness that's brighter than the stars in the sky, it's not a man-made object. That's the upshot of what I'm trying to explain. Now, if we go back to our planetarium program Stellarium and look up Deneb, we can see that it has a magnitude of 1.25. Now that makes it one of the very brightest stars in the sky. And if you look at it juxtaposed to our object, which is just above it and to the right, it looks a little bit orange while the star Deneb looks a little bit blue. You can plainly see that its brightness is very much equivalent to that of Deneb, and it's brighter than the vast majority of the stars that surround it. And that tells us one thing for certain: this object is not a man-made object, because its brightness is equal to or brighter than the brightest stars that are visible in the night sky, all of which are brighter than the brightest man-made objects in the sky. Now, when I say brightness, I mean apparent brightness or average brightness. This object, in addition to being brighter than the local stars, flares with an intensity that far exceeds that of the stars and far exceeds that of any star. And as you know, I call these objects flashers or flybys. I think they're saying hi. The last one that I have for you today is a very strange one. And I'm not sure how to classify it, whether it's a flasher or an orb, because it appears first to be something of an orange orb, and then it flashes very, very brightly several times, much brighter than the stars around it. And finally, the last time that we see it, it becomes an orange orb. Now, I stopped it there so that you could get a better look at it. In the video, it simply lasts for less than a second as an orange orb, and then it disappears and we don't see it again. Well, as I said, this is a strange one. It looks like an orb, but it puts out a pulse of light that's as bright as the moon for a few tens of milliseconds. Meanwhile, it alternates color between orange and a dim white. I suppose it's conceivable that this could be a flaring satellite, but I cannot understand how a satellite, which is quite small and 500 kilometers distant, could appear from the surface as a distinct orange ball without any telescopic magnification. Now, the next clip I have today was taken by a dear friend of mine from her deck in New Mexico, looking out into the dark night sky. And it is a blue orb that appears and becomes extremely brilliant for a period of a couple of minutes, and then disappears again back into the blackness. Let you watch it for a minute. If you're still here, you're more likely to want to listen to my hypothesis of what these orbs actually are. Now understand that I have no scientific proof for any of this other than what I personally have witnessed, and you've seen most of what I've witnessed. My hypothesis is based upon what I've seen, what others have seen and described to me, and upon channeled information received by myself and by others that I know and trust. First, you have to accept that we, as flesh and blood humans, perceive only a tiny bit of the information that's available about our environment. And this is because our senses are very limited in terms of the bandwidth they can perceive. Our eyesight's an easily understandable example of what I mean. Our eyes can only perceive the visible spectrum, and that's just a tiny fraction of the total light in the environment. So when that light enters our eyes, it's changed into a low amplitude, low voltage electrical signal, which is sent to our brain. That signal contains only the tiniest fraction of the information that was in the light falling upon our eyes. It's like looking through a crack in the door and trying to construct an entire image of what is all around all the house. Most of it has to be made up on the spot from experience and guesswork. The problem with all this is that there's a great deal more going on around us than we're aware of. We've created our science and technology based upon what we can perceive. We're very reluctant to accept the existence of reality outside of what we perceive, and therefore we just reject it. We do occasionally perceive a bit of this additional information, a bit of this additional reality, which we call the paranormal. And again, because we can't see it, we pretend that it's not there. Now this, I suppose, is a survival strategy telling us to run away from what we don't understand. There's a concept described in many ancient writings that everything is energy, and that energy is defined by its vibration, its frequency. And our science has confirmed this. It's also known that frequencies close to one another resonate with each other. They combine and interact. But if they're widely spaced, they don't interact. Indeed, they can coexist in the same space without affecting each other, like radio stations. Frequencies exist simultaneously in the same space without interfering with one another. Now, where's all this going? Well, I suspect that reality's like this. Everything exists in the same space, all at once. It's all separated by frequency. If an object or an entity could change its frequency, it could be perceived by entities existing in a different frequency band. And this, I believe, is what's happening when we see objects in our environment that are not quite here or there. Moreover, there are layers of similar frequencies, and they coexist like layers in a layer cake. The lower frequency layers are lower energy, and they're denser than the higher frequency layers, which are higher energy and less dense. Sometimes people call these frequency layers dimensions, but that term confuses frequency with space and time. That clucking you hear in the background are the turkeys, which live right here next to the deck, and they can be very noisy on a sunny day. When you hear that visitors to our planet are interdimensional, you should understand that to mean that they're changing their frequency to match yours. They don't come from another place, they come from another frequency layer. I think that the orbs are entities from higher frequency layers that are visiting this frequency layer. They're able to reduce their frequency enough to become interactive in this frequency layer. They use some organic or perhaps a non-organic technology to do this. I confess I do not understand how this would work, but if one was able to create a bubble of lower frequency on the outside, completely enclosing a higher frequency on the inside, inside that bubble, you could exist in your higher frequency reality without lowering your own frequency. And this, I believe, is what they do. This, I believe, is what orbs are. None of the fundamentals ideas that I've proposed here conflict with science as we understand it. Einstein showed that matter is energy. Planck showed us that higher frequencies are higher energies, lower frequencies are lower energies. Perhaps I've stretched the science a bit, but that's what hypotheses are supposed to do. You think on these ideas, and we'll talk more later. And thanks for watching.